Hey guys, tonight we're taking you somewhere even more nightmarish than your office break room after someone reheats fish, straight into the fever dream that was the Salem Witch Trials. That's right, the year is 1692. You're wearing more wool than sense, and you're about to find out what happens when small-town drama, mass hysteria, and zero access to Netflix collide. Before we tiptoe barefoot through the legal minefield that was colonial justice, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy hanging out here with the rest of us insomniacs. Drop a comment with your favorite weird historical punishment, or just tell me what time you're listening. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for some white noise, and get comfortable. Maybe pull the covers a little tighter tonight. But seriously, have you ever wondered what it was actually like to stand trial for witchcraft in a town where everyone's idea of a fun afternoon is watching your neighbor get accused of summoning the devil over a loaf of slightly stale bread? Would you have survived the 17th century American justice system, or would you have been labeled suspicious for having too many cats, reading books, or sneezing at the wrong time? Did witches really fly? Or did they just wish they could escape the endless parade of public humiliation and dubious tests involving, for some reason, a pond and a really long stick? And what exactly counted as torture back then, besides being forced to listen to your Puritan cousin's sermon about the dangers of buttoned sleeves? Congratulations, you've just woken up in Salem, Massachusetts. In 1692, the year paranoia puts on a hat, grabs a pitchfork, and gets to work. You open your eyes to the soft glow of a tallow candle and the heavy scent of damp wool. Welcome to Salem, where the only thing more abundant than suspicion is oatmeal. The gossip is thicker than the morning fog, side-eyeing everyone else, especially if you've got red hair or a mysterious mole. Your first breath of 1692 air hits your lungs with all the subtlety of a wet muskrat. The house you're waking up in is a two-room wonder, drafty enough that you can feel the wind critiquing your life choices, but not quite breezy enough to clear out the ever-present stew of body odor, smoke, and boiled turnips. As you sit up in bed, you realize you're already being watched by 3 family members, 2 goats, and a neighbor who doesn't even live here, but heard a rumor you once put sugar in your tea. Privacy isn't a concept, it's a sin. You start your day the colonial way, with a bowl of something that may or may not be porridge. It's grey, gluey, and has the consistency of regret. Someone in the room mumbles a prayer, and you have to concentrate hard not to add, "Dear Lord, please let this breakfast taste less like sorrow today." Spoiler, it does not. The only thing that keeps it down is the knowledge that talking back to your elders about food is only slightly less dangerous than talking back about religion. In Salem, a raised eyebrow is a crime, and second helpings are a miracle. Outside, the town is already humming with that unique blend of Puritan piety and barely suppressed panic. Every sound feels suspicious. Church bells ring, but you can't tell if they're calling you to worship or warning you that someone saw your cousin talking to a black cat. If you walk too fast, you're running from the law. Walk too slow, and you're plotting something. There's a sweet spot, just brisk enough to look pious. Not so brisk, you seem haunted. You pass by your neighbors on the muddy lane. They're smiling, but their eyes are working overtime, mentally cataloguing your hat, your shoes, and the amount of mud on your hem. Too little mud means you're vain. Too much, and you're clearly consorting with dark forces in the woods. It's an atmosphere where the biggest community event is hoping you're not the next headline, and the only thing everyone agrees on is that things are getting weirder by the day. Every house seems to be leaking rumors. Mrs. Putnam has a feeling about your aunt. The baker's apprentice claims he saw a ghostly figure outside the church, and the town's one doctor is fairly certain someone is bewitching his bread starter. No one is safe from suspicion. and the local children have made a sport of guessing who's next on the accused list. If you cough, they giggle. If you sneeze, they scream. You, friend, are living in a live-action anxiety dream. The market is a social minefield. Need to buy some flour? Better not haggle too much. Frugality is admirable, but greed is the devil's playground. Pick up some herbs for a cold, and you're just one dried sage bundle away from being labeled a cunning woman, which in Salem is code for keep an eye on her. Even your shopping list is evidence. All the while, the Puritan ministers are doubling down on sermons about invisible evil. If your mind ever drifts to anything cheerful, congratulations. You're tempted by Satan. Feeling happy is at best suspicious, and at worst, probable cause. The result? A town full of people pretending they've never smiled, laughed, or enjoyed anything more than reading Leviticus by candlelight. And so you make it through another day in Salem, a little colder, a little more careful, and definitely no closer to clearing your name of whatever imaginary crime you've committed. You finish your bowl of porridge, keep your head down, and try to blend in with the rest of the fearful, sleep-deprived crowd. Because here, in the land of paranoia and porridge, it's not about being innocent. It's about not being the most interesting person in the room. By nightfall, you're back in bed, listening to the wind whistle outside and the neighbors whisper inside. You pull the blanket over your head, praying for a dreamless sleep and a day tomorrow where nobody remembers you exist. In Salem, that's the closest thing to safety you'll get. If you thought your family was strict, wait until you meet the Puritans. Joy is considered suspicious, dancing is a felony, and the only music allowed is the sound of your neighbor repenting loudly. Here, wearing the wrong hat can land you on a list. Spoiler, it's not Santa's. You're here in 1692, in a society designed to make every day feel like the morning after a sermon that went 2 hours too long. The Puritans didn't just invent guilt, they made it a community event. From the moment you wake up, you're expected to radiate humility, piety, and just enough misery to show you're not enjoying yourself too much. Fun is frowned upon. Leisure is practically a gateway sin. And even the chickens look nervous if they lay an egg on a Sunday. Let's talk fashion, because nothing says cheerful like a wardrobe inspired by the color of mud and existential dread. Your daily attire is black, brown, or a shade of beige that could double as unbaked bread. Buttons are suspiciously decadent, lace is an affront to God, and if your shoes aren't at least half a size too uncomfortable, you're risking moral decay. And hats? Sure, but not too floppy. Floppy hats are for the wicked. Wear a feather, and you'll be explaining yourself to the town elders, who think birds are just one step away from sorcery. You may be wondering what Puritans do for fun. The answer is nothing. There are no birthday parties, no maypole dances, and absolutely no flirting, unless you count lengthy eye contact over a communal hymn book as a scandalous thrill. Children's games involve reciting the 10 Commandments, or, if they're feeling rowdy, guess the sin. Forget hopscotch. The only thing anyone's hopping over is the line between righteousness and eternal doom. The church is the center of everything. Think of it as your community center. Town hall, lecture theater, and group therapy session, all rolled into one, and somehow none of them enjoyable. You're expected at every service, every meeting, and every fast day. Miss one, and it's only a matter of time before someone in the neighborhood is asking pointed questions about your commitment. The sermons are longer than most modern movies and include less action, but more graphic descriptions of hell. But it's not just the church. Puritan rules are everywhere, down to the last cracked mug and patch of your garden. No swearing, no idleness, and for heaven's sake, no card games. Cards are the devil's pamphlets. If you're caught with dice, You'll be explaining to the council why you were trying to summon luck instead of God's will. And don't even think about sports. The only acceptable physical activity is chopping firewood or escaping a house fire. Ideally both with a proper sense of repentance. If you're married, congratulations. You get to live out the Puritan dream. A partnership based on mutual suspicion of anything that feels nice. Couples are encouraged to be loving but not too loving. If you're caught laughing together in public, it's time to schedule an extra prayer session. If you're single past a certain age, there's a solid chance you'll be accused of either witchcraft or thinking too much. Both considered equally dangerous. Meals are a somber affair. There's no enjoy your meal, it's more like endure your meal. You eat with your family in silence, interrupted only by the sound of grace being muttered for a suspiciously long time. If you accidentally smile after a particularly good spoonful of mush, you'll want to cover with a quick prayer for forgiveness. In this world, the only thing more frightening than hunger is the idea that someone might actually be satisfied. Even the landscape is bleak, cleared of any unnecessary color or delight. Gardens are for vegetables and repentance, not flowers. Music is for church, not pleasure. If you find yourself whistling, you're either possessed or about to be. Joy is a private thing, best hidden and quickly forgotten. It's alarmingly easy to be labeled a witch. Are you poor? Witch. Too rich? Witch. Do you bake bread that rises better than your neighbors? Double witch. Basically, if you've ever had a personality or an opinion, congrats, you're a prime suspect. Step 1. Exist. Step 2. Do literally anything that draws attention. In 1690, to Salem, standing out is more dangerous than jaywalking on a highway today. The official list of warning signs is longer than the local church roll. Got an odd pet? That's a familiar. Enjoy herbal tea? Clearly, you're mixing potions. Did you once mutter to yourself while gardening? You just cursed the squash. The only safe hobbies are staring at walls and regretting things silently. Take your pick of risky behaviors. Are you a woman with property? Watch out. Salem does not appreciate upward mobility unless it's up the gallows. Are you outspoken, opinionated, or, God forbid, educated? That's suspicious. The quickest way to attract attention is to use big words or refuse to defer to the loudest man in the room. Even being nice to your neighbors can backfire, especially if their cow dies or their pie crust flops. Helpful is just a fancy word for witchy. But don't think men are off the hook. If you're the wrong sort of man, eccentric, introverted, too bookish, or just have bad luck with chickens, you too could be next. The trials weren't just about gender. They were about anyone who upset the invisible balance of Puritan society. Have a limp? Walk funny? Laugh at the wrong time? You'll get a reputation faster than you can say afflicted. Got kids? You might want to keep them quiet. Children are equal parts witnesses, accusers, and chaos agents. If your child has a nightmare, it might turn into courtroom evidence. Did your daughter say she saw you in a dream? Flying over the barn? That's a fast track to jail. Never mind the fact that last week she claimed to see a unicorn and nobody cared. Then there's bad luck, which is basically a Salem currency. If your pig dies, your crops fail, or you stub your toe with suspicious frequency, it's got to be witchcraft. And since humans love patterns, the last person you exchanged harsh words with is probably at the top of your suspect list. Forget innocent until proven guilty. In Salem, it's unlucky until proven unwitchy. Even your social calendar can get you in trouble. Skip church? Witch. Go to church too much? Witch. Show up on time? Suspicious. Arrive late? Obvious. Witch. There's no Goldilocks zone, only a growing list of reasons people might start side-eyeing you. And then there's the ultimate trap. Grudges. Did you accidentally insult someone's stew? Did you borrow a petticoat and forget to return it? That's basically sorcery in action. The Puritans have the memory of an elephant and the forgiveness of a startled raccoon. Small conflicts become evidence, and petty drama becomes legal testimony. Welcome to the original reality show, but with higher stakes and fewer commercial breaks. And let's not forget the look. The dreaded evil eye could get you accused. Glanced at someone's baby and it cried? Witch. Frowned at a neighbor and their milk spoiled? That's on you. The science of the time says that malice can be transferred through glares. No scientific backing needed, just a room full of anxious neighbors. The cherry on this paranoid Sunday, sometimes you're just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe you tripped and fell into someone's flower bed, or you yawned during a prayer. Someone somewhere is always watching, keeping mental notes, waiting for a reason to point a finger. There are no appeals. No, that's not fair. And definitely no lawyers who specialize in witch defense. It's just you, your weird bread, and the endless anxiety of being one sneeze away from a trial. The courts are in session, and the rules are, let's say, flexible. Welcome to spectral evidence, where you can be convicted because someone dreamed you turned into a yellow dog and danced on their chest. No, really. It's like a legal system run entirely by sleep paralysis demons. You walk into the courtroom, a stuffy little meeting house filled with neighbors, nervous whispers, and the vague smell of wet wool. The air buzzes with anticipation, because nothing says justice like half the town hoping for a good show before dinner. The judges are perched at their bench, looking stern, and you can practically hear the collective tightening of belts as everyone prepares for a long afternoon of totally reasonable accusations. Today's star witness? A 13-year-old who claims you flew through her window and pinched her nose in the middle of the night. You have no alibi, because, shockingly, you were asleep. This is where spectral evidence comes in. In 1692, your physical body is practically irrelevant. All anyone needs is to claim that your spectre, your invisible ghost self, appeared to them while they were lying in bed, minding their own business, or, more likely, dozing off after too much pottage. I saw Goody Proctor standing by my bed. She was shimmering and making the dog bark in Latin. The crowd gasps, and you, Goody Proctor, are left speechless, wishing you had at least brushed up on your ghost Latin. There's something almost poetic in how truly bananas this system is. The law doesn't require physical proof, no weird ingredients, no broomsticks, not even a slightly suspicious birthmark. Instead, all it takes is a vivid imagination and a willingness to tell a good story. Bonus points if you can work in some animal transformations or shadowy threats delivered via dream sequence. Want to get someone in trouble? Just say you saw their shadowy form pouring spoiled milk over your head in a vision. The only requirement is that it sounds vaguely supernatural and, ideally, hard to disprove. The problem? You can't argue with a ghost. There's no way to cross-examine a vision. No chance to ask your spectral twin why it insisted on showing up covered in turnip soup. All you can do is stand there, desperately denying you were anywhere but your own bed, while 3 witnesses nod solemnly and describe you levitating over the town square. It's like being put on trial for your dream self's bad decisions, except nobody ever dreams of you doing their taxes or folding laundry. The audience is in on it too. Every cough, twitch, or yawn from the accused is interpreted as a sign that your spirit is up to no good. If you scratch your nose during testimony, it's probably a secret hex. If you trip walking to the stand, that's evidence your soul is busy tormenting livestock somewhere else. The more you protest, the guiltier you look. In fact, maintaining your innocence is practically a confession. Why would an honest person try so hard to seem honest? The logic goes. Judges, for their part, are just as overwhelmed as everyone else. Some of them are genuinely terrified that invisible armies of witches are lurking in the rafters, ready to pounce. Others just want to avoid being accused themselves. After all, it only takes one angry neighbor and a little too much wine for someone to see your spectre dancing in the cornfield. The safest bet is to look extra serious, nod a lot, and hope you never have a particularly memorable dream. Spectral evidence isn't just absurd, it's wildly dangerous. It turns every grudge, every childhood fantasy, and every bad night's sleep into ammunition for the prosecution. The result is a courtroom where imagination reigns, logic sits quietly in the corner, and common sense is last seen running for the woods. It's not about truth. It's about who can tell the most convincing ghost story with a straight face. Picture this. You're tied to a wooden chair, dunked into a freezing pond, and everyone's watching to see if you float. Float, and you're a witch. Sink, and you're innocent. Also, probably dead. It's the 1692 version of damned if you do, drowned if you don't. Let's set the scene. It's a grey morning in Salem, and the pond is colder than your mother-in-law's handshake. A crowd gathers at the water's edge, clutching cloaks and clutching gossip, eager for an event that is somehow both entertainment and justice. You're the star of today's show, and your only co-star is a creaky wooden contraption that looks like something your least handy uncle built out of fence posts and spite. It's called the dunking stool, and you're about to experience its special brand of hospitality. There are no lifeguards here. The town constable, who last swam when he was 6, leads you to the edge, reciting prayers as if they're about to help. The stool is a chair attached to a long wooden beam, with the far end bolted to the dock. You sit, wrists and ankles bound, trying not to shiver too visibly. Shivering is suspicious. Shivering means nerves, and nerves mean guilt. A hush falls as you're strapped in. Someone makes a joke about baptism by ice, but it's the sort of joke that makes everyone more nervous, not less. With a chorus of murmurs, the townsfolk lower you toward the water. The surface is black and uninviting, a mirror to your steadily plummeting hopes. Then, splash, you're under. The water is so cold it feels like a personal vendetta from Mother Nature herself. You come up gasping, hair plastered to your forehead, the audience peering down to see if you float. Spoiler, you're not buoyant. You're mostly panic and wool at this point. Let's take a moment to appreciate the logic. If you float, congratulations. Your soul is light enough to have made a deal with the devil. You're a witch. If you sink, you're innocent. Just tragically, heroically, and possibly permanently so. The entire process is less trial by jury and more trial by basic misunderstanding of physics. It's amazing anyone survived the colonial era with a working brain cell left. Your onlookers are here for both the spectacle and the schadenfreude. This is the town's main event, part punishment, part public service announcement, and part medieval pool party gone wrong. Children are told not to get too close, the water's cold, after all. But they're encouraged to watch, to remember that this is what happens to troublemakers and pie-crust overachievers. If you manage not to drown, you're hauled up, dripping and shivering, so someone can declare the results. The town elders nod and mutter, weighing the evidence. Did you float? Did your skirts billow out in the water? Betraying you with basic textile science. It doesn't really matter. The town has already decided your fate, and the stool is just here for the suspense. At this point, it's less about justice and more about keeping the narrative interesting. If you're especially unlucky, you'll be dunked again, just to be sure. Multiple dunks mean more chances for hypothermia, and more time for the crowd to swap new rumors. Maybe you kicked? Maybe you screamed? Which? Maybe you just sat there and shivered quietly. Which, the only way to win is not to play, and you didn't get that choice. After your aquatic ordeal, you're left with blue lips and a lingering cough, plus a reputation that's even more waterlogged than your clothes. You're not just tired and cold, you're a cautionary tale. Another reminder to everyone else that staying invisible is the only real survival strategy in Salem. Not all torture was creative. Some was just heavy. Enter pressing, where you're laid flat and they pile stones on top until you confess, or, become very flat. Giles Corey famously refused to confess, demanding more weight, which is basically the bravest way to ask for a bigger rock. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how deeply unglamorous this method is. There are no dark rituals, no cauldrons, no lightning bolts, just you, a patch of dirt, and a town committee with an impressive rock collection. This is colonial efficiency at its bleakest. No need for fancy tools, just gravity and some borrowed boulders from the local wall. It's as if someone said, let's invent a punishment so medieval, even medieval people would wince. Picture it. You're led out to a field, already exhausted by days of accusation and sleep deprivation. The crowd gathers, eager for something to break up the monotony of relentless piety and oatmeal. The officials explain the rules, which are simple: confess to witchcraft, or they'll keep stacking stones on you until you do. The process is called peine forte et dure, French for hard and forceful punishment, which is also a great band name. If you survive long enough to start one, you're stripped down and forced to lie on your back in the mud, staring up at the clouds, which are now the only thing lighter than your prospects. Planks of wood are placed across your chest, and the real fun begins. Townsfolk haul over the largest rocks they can find: stones, boulders, anything not already in use as a doorstop. Each rock lands with a thud, sending a message to the rest of Salem. Here's what happens if you don't cooperate. Every so often, a judge leans in and asks, "Do you confess?" If you say yes, the torture stops, but now you're branded a witch, and everything you own gets snatched up by the authorities. If you say no, or, like Giles Corey, stubbornly refuse to say anything at all, the stones keep coming. It's a lose-lose situation. The world's worst spa treatment, and somehow both boring and terrifying at the same time. As the stones pile up, so does the pressure, literally. Breathing becomes a luxury. Ribs creak. Joints complain. Your only escape is to slip into dark humor and dry defiance, which, in Giles Corey's case, meant using his last breaths to ask for more weight. It's the kind of sarcastic energy that would get you banned from any modern yoga class. But in 1692, it turns you into a legend. The crowd watches, half horrified, half impressed. Even the executioners are a little unsure if this is bravery or madness. But either way, they keep bringing rocks. The logic behind pressing was as shaky as the makeshift platform itself. Technically, the point was to extract a plea, guilty or not guilty. Refusing to enter a plea meant your trial couldn't proceed. And, just as importantly to the accused, your property couldn't legally be seized by the state. For someone like Giles Corey, who had land, livestock, and a stubborn streak a mile wide, it was the only way to ensure his heirs got anything at all. This was less about surviving and more about sticking it to the system with your last ounce of stubbornness. The experience itself? Unspeakably awful. Imagine lying perfectly still as your chest is crushed flatter than your enthusiasm for colonial fashion. Every breath feels like it might be your last. The ground is cold and unforgiving, and the sky above doesn't care if you confess or not. You're surrounded by people, but utterly alone. No defense lawyer, no last meal, just the weight of community suspicion and actual rocks. When Giles Corey finally died, he hadn't said a word except more weight. No confession, no satisfaction for the courts, just the ultimate act of resistance in a town obsessed with conformity. In a way, his silence was louder than any accusation, echoing through history, as proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to say what they want to hear. Imagine having your worst day, and now everyone gets to come laugh at you in the town square. The pillory is basically colonial Instagram, except the only filter is public humiliation, and the comment section throws actual vegetables. You know those awkward moments when you spill coffee on yourself or forget someone's name at work and wish you could just disappear? In 1692, Salem, disappearing isn't an option. Instead, you get to live out your embarrassment, front and center, for the entertainment of the entire town. The pillory is a wooden frame set atop a platform, fitted with holes for your head and hands. Once you're locked in, there's no scrolling past this post. Everyone's stopping to look, to judge, and probably to throw something squishy. Stocks are just as cozy. Two heavy planks clamp your feet in place, usually on a bench, and you're stuck there for hours or even days, like a living warning sign. The Puritan logic here is that public shame fixes everything. Bad attitude, unpaid debts, talking back, or just generally being too interesting for your own good. Even the innocent can end up on display if they annoy the wrong neighbor, which, as you may have noticed, is dangerously easy. The whole point of this punishment is to let your neighbors take an active role in your rehabilitation, which they do with gusto. People bring old produce, animal dung, and whatever leftovers they couldn't get the goats to eat. Suddenly, you're getting a facial of rotten turnips and cabbage leaves, courtesy of your very enthusiastic community. It's part punishment, part social event, and part medieval food fight. Kids practice their aim, local pranksters whisper insults, and that one guy who holds grudges over fence disputes always seems to be first in line with a handful of mud. There's also the non-stop commentary, because nothing brings out everyone's inner critic like a person trapped and unable to clap back. Nice hat, witch. Should have minded your business, goody. Everyone feels free to pile on with their best or worst jokes. It's the one time when being witty in public won't get you in trouble, unless you're the one in the stocks, in which case, no amount of comebacks will save you. And let's talk about the discomfort. The pillory isn't exactly designed for ergonomic support. Your neck cramps, your arms go numb, and drool becomes public property. The weather is never on your side. If it's sunny, you're baking. If it rains, you're soggy. If it's cold, your teeth chatter so much you sound like you're trying to cast a spell. Another good way to end up back here. Sitting in the stocks overnight is basically a test of how much numbness your legs can endure before they start a rebellion. Some people try to make the best of it. There are legends of folks who sang songs or made silly faces to entertain the crowd, trying to reclaim a little dignity or at least keep their spirits up. But most just grit their teeth and hope the town gets bored. Unfortunately, there's not much to compete with a live humiliation in a town where entertainment is mostly limited to sermon watching and competitive sheep herding. But the worst part isn't the pain, or the rotting vegetables, or even the terrible puns. It's knowing that everyone will remember this. Next week, next month, even next year, you'll still be the one who got hit in the face with a turnip. Colonial memory is long, and Puritan gossip is relentless. Your humiliation will outlast your bruises. As you're finally let out, sticky and sore, the crowd disperses, already whispering about who will be next. You dust yourself off, dignity in tatters, and shuffle home past snickering neighbors. There's no delete button for this moment, no way to hide the evidence. In the land of pillories and stocks, your worst day lives forever, preserved in the communal memory and replayed every time someone needs a laugh. Forget comfy prison bunks, Accused witches often got a bed made of pure anxiety and relentless questioning for days on end. If you start hallucinating, congratulations, you're now providing evidence against yourself. Picture yourself dragged from your bed in the dead of night, not even given time to grab your favorite scratchy wool blanket. You're hustled off to a cold cell, just wide enough for you and your regrets. The stone floor is damp, and your pillow is the wall. Forget about a mattress. Your only bedding is whatever you wore to bed. And if you're lucky, a bundle of straw that smells suspiciously like last week's cellmate. You shiver in the dark, staring at the flickering shadows, knowing the only thing more uncomfortable than the accommodations is what's about to happen next. It's not a good night's sleep. It's not even a bad nap. As soon as your eyes close, someone's rattling the door, banging a stick, or outright yelling at you to wake up. The authorities in Salem have a special talent for keeping accused witches awake for days. The logic? The more tired you are, the closer you are to confessing, or at least saying something weird enough to be used as proof. Fatigue becomes its own kind of torture, not flashy, but brutally effective. Day melts into night, and night into more endless questions. Who bewitched Goody Putnam's cow? Did you meet the devil at the crossroads? How many cats do you own? And do they ever meow in Latin? You're asked the same things again and again until your sense of time dissolves. Sleep deprivation strips away your resistance and your sense of reality. At a certain point, you'd admit to anything just to get 5 minutes with your eyes closed, even if it means confessing that you ride a broomstick to Boston on Thursdays. Your mind begins to play tricks on you. Every creak becomes a threat, every whispered word another accusation. When you finally doze off, your dreams are feverish and strange, and you wake up unsure if you said something out loud or just thought you did. The jailers take notes. Did you mutter a curse in your sleep? Did you twitch the wrong way? That's practically a confession. Forget due process. Here, insomnia is all the cross-examination anyone needs. Let's talk about the examiners. Not doctors, not psychologists, but neighbors with a chip on their shoulder and plenty of time. They pop into your cell, sometimes in the middle of the night, just to see if you'll slip up and say something incriminating. It's less law and order, and more sleepover interrogation run by people who don't like you. They shine candles in your face, poke and prod, and sometimes wake you just to ask what you're dreaming about. Bad dreams? Definitely witchy. Good dreams? Even more suspicious. No dreams at all? Now, you're just hiding something. Other prisoners are no help. The cells are crowded, echoing with coughs, snores, and anxious prayers. Someone nearby is always weeping, and another is mumbling through her own accusations. No privacy, no comfort, no relief from the endless noise. In this sleepless environment, friendships dissolve and paranoia grows. Did the jailer just whisper something about you? Did your cellmate move closer? Or did you imagine it? Reality bends and blurs, and so does your story. After days without real sleep, you're physically and mentally worn down to nothing. Your memories twist and blur. Your sense of guilt or innocence starts to feel irrelevant. The town authorities know exactly what they're doing. Tired people are easy to break, easier to blame, and best of all, they're too exhausted to put up a convincing defense. Maybe you start to wonder if you really did something wrong. After all, why else would you feel so terrible? And here's the most diabolical twist. If you confess under sleep deprivation, your confession becomes tomorrow's headline. If you deny everything, your exhaustion is seen as the devil fighting to keep you silent. Either way, you lose. Salem's idea of justice is a marathon of misery, with no finish line and no real rest. You're marched into court, forced to touch a bewitched person. If they stop convulsing, you're a witch. If nothing happens, they keep trying until someone gets bored or hungry. Scientific? No. Entertaining for the crowd? Sadly, yes. Welcome to the touch test, one of Salem's greatest hits in the lineup of bizarre legal experiments. Imagine being paraded into a packed courtroom, your heart pounding as a young girl flails about on the floor, shrieking about invisible claws and ghostly pinches. The crowd leans in. Nothing on daytime TV beats this for drama. You're told, with all the gravitas of a judge who hasn't slept since last Tuesday, to approach the victim and place your hand on them. The moment you touch the afflicted, everyone holds their breath. If the victim suddenly calms down, congratulations. You've just confirmed your supernatural guilt. The logic is ironclad, in a medieval kind of way. Only a witch could soothe the torment she caused. If nothing happens, don't get too comfortable. They'll have you touch someone else, or the same person again, or maybe just wait for a bigger crowd. If you look nervous, who wouldn't? That's more evidence. If you look calm, you must be hiding something. Basically, there's no winning, unless you count winning as getting through this without screaming. The roots of the touch test are buried deep in old European superstition, where the witch's touch was believed to either heal or harm. In Salem, this has evolved into a court-approved magic trick, equal parts panic and performance art. It doesn't matter that the afflicted are mostly children or teenagers, or that their fits mysteriously appear only during peak audience hours. If little Abigail stops screaming after you pat her arm, you've just done the supernatural equivalent of leaving fingerprints at the crime scene. From the outside, it looks ridiculous. Grown adults solemnly nodding as a girl goes from possessed to peaceful in the time it takes to butter a biscuit. But inside the courtroom, fear is king. No one wants to be the skeptic who speaks up. Not when disbelief is the fastest route to joining you in the defendant's chair. The test becomes theatre, with everyone playing their part, from the trembling accuser to the crowd gasping at every shudder and sigh. Let's talk about the afflicted themselves, usually a clique of local girls who know how to put on a show. They writhe, shriek, bark, and sometimes even claim to see invisible birds perched on your head. The instant your hand makes contact, some of them snap out of it with Oscar-worthy precision, while others keep the drama going, just in case the judges missed it the first time. Sometimes, the test fails spectacularly, and the afflicted keep flopping around even after your touch. Not to worry, the judges will try again later. After all, witchcraft is fickle and apparently runs on its own schedule. For you, the accused, the experience is like a rigged game show where every round just makes things worse. You can't plead logic or ask for a second opinion from a licensed physician. You just have to stand there, sweating under your bonnet, and hope your mere presence doesn't accidentally heal anyone. At the same time, you silently pray that the crowd gets hungry and decides to break for lunch. Of course, all of this is being carefully recorded by the court's scribes, ready to immortalize the day you became a human Ouija board. Your touch will be cited as evidence, retold in whispers, and added to the growing stack of reasons why you should be locked up. Or worse. Your neighbors will remember this, long after the convulsions end. The touch test is a masterclass in circular logic. You're accused, you're tested, and every possible outcome proves your guilt. It's not science, it's not justice. It's Salem's answer to who wants to be a witch? And the only lifeline is hoping the afflicted run out of energy before you do. Someone bakes a witch cake made of rye and your pee. It's supposed to reveal your guilt. But mostly, it reveals a deep misunderstanding of both baking and medical science. Welcome to history's grossest cooking show. Here's how it works. Your neighbor's child gets sick. Livestock start acting weird. or maybe someone's bread won't rise. Obviously, witchcraft must be afoot. Forget about germs, spoiled grain, or a run of bad luck. That's 17th century thinking. The answer in Salem? Whip up a mystical pastry with a secret ingredient straight from the accused. Yes, bodily fluids, nature's least delicious flavoring. The witch cake starts with a classic base, rye meal, because wheat is for people not currently under suspicion. Add a dash of panic, a scoop of neighborly suspicion, and then the magic. Urine from the allegedly afflicted. The mixture is baked into a sad little loaf that, frankly, would never win the county fair, even before you consider what's gone into it. Now, what's the science here? According to local folklore, if a dog eats the cake and starts acting funny, barking, howling, or looking vaguely guilty, then the person whose urine is in the dough is obviously the witch. If the dog just sniffs it and walks away, that's not proof of innocence, just proof your recipe is terrible. No matter what happens, it's evidence. This is Salem logic. The more disgusting the process, the more it must work. You might wonder who came up with this method. It's usually attributed to cunning folk, self-styled experts in magic, herbs, and all things supernatural. Someone's always got a cousin who knows a lady who knows a guy who read about this in an old country almanac. Suddenly, your bodily fluids are community property, and everyone's standing around the hearth, waiting for the big reveal. Baking a urine cake isn't even the weirdest thing that happens in Salem. It's just Tuesday. Let's talk about the test subject. It's not just any dog. It's often the family's own, now conscripted into the role of culinary detective. The poor animal is dragged into the kitchen, plopped down in front of a steaming heap of what can only be described as crime bread, and urged to dig in. Dogs are generally enthusiastic eaters, but even they have limits. If Fido takes a bite and starts scratching, sneezing, or generally looking perturbed, it's time to call the magistrate. And the aftermath? Even if the results are inconclusive, your reputation is toast, much like the rye loaf. Everyone knows you were part of the pea cake investigation, and rumors spread faster than butter on hot bread. It doesn't matter that the whole process is about as scientific as diagnosing illness by reading tea leaves. In Salem, fear has a way of making people believe anything, especially if it involves new and exciting ways to humiliate their enemies. Of course, this baking experiment is really just a way for the town to justify its suspicions using the thinnest veneer of evidence. If someone doesn't like you, it's all too easy to suggest the witch cake. Suddenly, everyone's peering at you sideways in church, whispering about your peculiar smell or the strange way your bread always turns out perfect. Even your dog isn't sure which side he's on anymore. If the witch cake fails to produce a confession, the court just moves on to the next absurd test, like dunking you in a pond or inspecting your body for suspicious moles. But the social damage is done. You're now officially the one with the cake. And in a town where everyone's watching for signs of the devil, it's one label you'll never quite shake. Ever tried to defend yourself while being yelled at by 7 angry neighbors and 1 deeply suspicious pastor? The Salem method: just keep asking until someone breaks or accidentally confesses to also being a werewolf. You're hauled into a cramped room, sweat beading on your forehead. The town elders loom over you with that special brand of concern reserved for people who want you to admit you're in league with Satan. It's not exactly an episode of Law and Order. Witch Unit. More like Panic and Paranoia. Colonial Edition. The interrogators aren't just the magistrates. Everyone who's ever had a minor grievance against you is suddenly very interested in what you have to say. Mrs. Proctor claims you hexed her chicken. The blacksmith's apprentice insists you gave him the evil eye. And even your cousin is looking at you like she's considering changing her will. The first tactic is simple. Ask the same question. over and over, from every possible angle. Were you with the devil last Thursday? Did you attend a witch meeting? Did you ever see a cat with a human face? If you hesitate, you're stalling for time, proof. If you answer too quickly, you must have rehearsed, also proof. Basically, your best bet is to become a statue, which unfortunately is just more proof that you're hiding something. It's a lose-lose situation with a built-in echo chamber of doubt. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Did your voice quaver? Guilty. Did you raise your voice? Clearly possessed. Did you stay calm and dignified? You must have supernatural composure, which, the art of the interrogation is less about uncovering the truth and more about mining you for any sentence that could be twisted, taken out of context, or repeated at the next church potluck as irrefutable evidence. And then comes the pressure to confess. Everyone leans in, eyes wide, offering a strange combination of threats and promises. Confess now, and maybe you'll avoid execution, just some light jail time, a ruined reputation, and the eternal gratitude of your least favorite neighbor. Refuse, and the ordeal drags on, growing more intense, as they bring in new witnesses who are suddenly remembering all sorts of dark things you supposedly did, like that time you sneezed suspiciously near a dying goat. At this point, you're exhausted. You haven't slept in days. You've been shouted at, accused, and made to feel like your mere existence is a crime. The magistrates begin to suggest what you might have done, planting the details for you, making it clear that the only way out is through their story. You danced in the woods, didn't you? With the others, the devil came to you at night, yes? The more you deny, the more they push. It's a script you never auditioned for, and they refuse to let you leave the stage until you hit your cues. Some people break, because everyone breaks, eventually. Maybe it's the endless questioning, or maybe it's the promise of mercy. But suddenly you're nodding, agreeing, saying whatever it takes to make the voices stop. You name names, friends, neighbors, anyone who ever borrowed your butter churn and forgot to return it. You confess to things you never even imagined, just so you can get a moment's peace. Of course, your confession is written down, passed around, and used as evidence against you and anyone unlucky enough to be in your social circle. By the end, you're not just broken, you're complicit in the machinery of suspicion. In Salem, the only thing more dangerous than being accused is trying to defend yourself. The interrogations never really end. They just take turns, moving from you to the next unlucky soul. They'll drag you out to a pond, tie you up, and see if you float. Float? Witch. Sink? Not a witch. But now you're waterlogged and still under suspicion. Hope you brought your floaties and a very forgiving attitude toward pneumonia. Welcome to Swimming a Witch, a test that combines the worst of amateur science, public spectacle, and zero respect for personal safety. The town gathers around the pond, their excitement only matched by their lack of understanding of buoyancy. You're the main event, dressed in your heaviest, itchiest woolens, which, if nothing else, guarantees you'll be cold and miserable even before your feet hit the water. The logic is brilliant in the way only medieval justice can be. Water, it's believed, is pure and holy, so it will reject evil. In practice, this means, if you float, you've been pushed away by nature itself. If you sink, the water accepts you, and you're presumably not a witch. Unfortunately, no one seems concerned about the minor detail that most humans, especially when tied up and panicking, aren't exactly natural-born floaters. Let's talk logistics. You're bound at the wrists and ankles, just loose enough for plausible deniability if someone asks about safety regulations. The town constable, who has only recently mastered tying his own shoes, is in charge of knots. Once you're trussed up like a medieval turkey, you're dropped or nudged, sometimes not too gently, into the freezing pond. The crowd oohs, ahs, and exchanges bets on whether you'll pop back up like a haunted cork or vanish below the surface like last week's dignity. The actual experience is worse than any public pool mishap. Water rushes up your nose, your clothes turn to lead, and panic makes your heart do gymnastics. If you float, or at least manage not to drown, everyone gasps, surely you're using witchcraft to defy gravity. If you sink, a few strong-armed bystanders might haul you out before you actually expire, but there's no guarantee. Rescuing accused witches isn't exactly an Olympic sport. And here's the best part. Even passing the test doesn't guarantee your freedom. After all, you're still accused, still shivering, and still on the town's radar as someone just suspicious enough. There's no official certificate of innocence, just a cough, some lingering hypothermia, and the knowledge that the whole community now knows what your terrified face looks like underwater. The townsfolk, of course, are loving it. This is prime-time entertainment, a break from their daily grind of worrying about crops, the devil, and whether or not their porridge is bewitched. Kids cheer, old ladies whisper predictions, and the preacher tries not to look too interested, but is definitely keeping score. It's all fun and games, until someone actually sinks for good, in which case, there's a brief, awkward silence before everyone quietly agrees it was probably God's will. Some poor souls try to cheat the system, stuffing extra rags into their clothes for buoyancy, or praying for divine intervention to sink like a stone. Doesn't matter. In Salem, the rules change to fit the outcome. Survive, and you must be magical. Don't survive, and well, you're still suspicious, but at least you're not a public menace anymore. By the end, you're hauled ashore, muddy, gasping, and drenched in shame as much as pond water. You limp home, knowing the ordeal isn't over. The rumors grow. Did you see how she floated? I heard he almost sank. But then the devil lifted him back up. You can't win. The test is rigged. The crowd is merciless. And all you've proved is that Salem never met a bad idea it couldn't turn into an afternoon outing. So next time you're worried about looking silly at the community pool, just be grateful you're not being swum for your life. In 1692 Salem, the only thing less forgiving than the water is the people watching from shore. Jail cells are cold, cramped, and you're probably chained to the wall next to a guy who thinks sneezing is witchcraft. Sleeping here is like a medieval escape room with worse snacks. Picture it. Your new home is a windowless stone box about the size of a broom closet. And it's definitely not on any real estate agent's must-see list. You're greeted by the comforting aroma of mold, sweat, and a mysterious stew that's been festering in the corner since the last solar eclipse. There are no beds, no blankets, and certainly no privacy. The jailer hands you a set of clanking iron shackles, which double as both a fashion statement and a safety feature. If by safety you mean good luck ever rolling over at night. Your cellmates are a collection of the most nervous and unlucky souls in Salem. One is convinced that the guards are possessed. Another thinks their freckles are slowly spelling out Bible verses. And the third just cries softly into a turnip. The walls are damp. And if you listen closely, you'll hear a choir of rats serenading you with tiny, desperate feet. The straw on the floor offers exactly zero comfort, unless your definition of comfort involves itching, sneezing, and the lingering suspicion that it's moving on its own. Nighttime in colonial jail isn't so much restful as endurance training. You're chained to the wall, or sometimes even the floor, the cold iron biting into your wrists and ankles. The chains are meant to keep you from escaping or, worse, casting spells in your sleep. Not that you could perform much witchcraft when your main supernatural talent is developing bed sores. Sleep comes in tiny bursts, Every creak, snore, or distant scream yanks you awake, heart pounding. If you're lucky, you'll catch a few minutes before the next round of interrogations or the next cellmate's nightmare. And speaking of nightmares, let's not forget the food. Dinner arrives in a greasy wooden bowl, think stew, but with the nutritional value and flavor profile of muddy rainwater. If you're very, very lucky, there's a scrap of stale bread to gnaw on, or maybe a single boiled onion. Clean water? Only if you like your drinks spiced with the faint taste of rust and despair. Don't bother complaining. The jailer is too busy gossiping about your suspicious cough to care about your Yelp review. Hygiene is wishful thinking. There's a single bucket in the corner for, well, everything else. If it gets full, congratulations, you're part of the cleaning crew. Showers, of course, haven't been invented, and the nearest thing to a spa day is when rainwater drips through the ceiling and lands in your lap. Personal space is a luxury no one can afford. You're shoulder to shoulder with strangers, all of whom are on edge, and all convinced that someone in the room is a witch. Probably you. The worst part isn't the cold, the chains, or the stew. It's the sense of being forgotten. Days blur together. The windowless walls give no clue about time, and the only daylight is the hope you cling to when you hear the distant church bells. Sometimes a guard comes in to rattle chains or glare at you suspiciously, just to remind you that you're still considered dangerous. And as you try to sleep, you wonder how you ended up here. Was it the wrong look at the wrong neighbor? An unlucky sneeze? Or just being too interesting for a town with no tolerance for surprises? Your dreams, if you have them, are haunted by the fear that you'll never see sunlight, real bread, or a mattress again. So the next time you're annoyed by thin hotel walls or a bad night's sleep, be grateful you're not in colonial jail, chained up for a crime nobody can prove, listening to rats sing back up to your cellmate's paranoia. In 1692, a good night's rest is just another kind of impossible magic. Prison food is mostly air, and disease runs wild. If the charges don't get you, dysentery might. Your cellmate's main hobby, dying of boredom, then dying of other things. You might have thought that being accused of witchcraft was the worst thing that could happen to you in Salem. But the real punishment starts the moment you're shoved into jail. Forget gourmet meals or even school cafeteria food here. Mealtime is a loosely defined ritual that mostly involves staring at an empty bowl and wondering what it would taste like if there was anything actually in it. You're handed a chunk of bread so stale it could be used for home defense, and a splash of watery soup that somehow manages to taste like less than nothing. Hunger is a constant companion, gnawing at you day and night. You start dreaming about turnips, missing the good old days when your biggest food worry was whether the pottage had too much cabbage. The guards occasionally toss you scraps, a withered carrot here, a suspicious lump of something there, but only if you're lucky, and only after the rats have had a good sniff. If you ask for more, you'll get a lecture on the dangers of gluttony and maybe a bonus helping of air pudding, but food is only the first problem. Sickness is a close second, and far more creative. The air in the jail is thick, warm, and full of invisible horrors. Someone's always coughing, sneezing, or moaning in the corner. The only thing spreading faster than rumors are the germs, especially when there are 6 of you packed in a cell designed for 2. Hygiene is a myth, and hand washing is just a fond memory. Everyone's hair is matted. The straw bedding is alive with things that itch and bite, and your nose becomes permanently offended by the medley of sweat, mildew, and something you sincerely hope is not a dead mouse. Dysentery is the unofficial cellmate you never asked for. Water comes from a shared bucket, and it's safer not to ask why it smells funny. One day you have a mild stomachache. The next, you're fighting for space over the one communal chamber pot. Privacy? None. Dignity? Gone. You try to keep to yourself, but the groans of your neighbors are impossible to ignore. The only thing worse than suffering is watching someone else get sick and knowing you'll probably be next. Sometimes, people die, quietly or with a lot of fuss, but always inconveniently for everyone left behind. Bodies are removed with little ceremony, and the space they leave behind is quickly filled with another unlucky soul dragged in off the street. The jailers barely notice. Their main job seems to be counting heads, not saving lives. The worst part is how quickly you start to accept this as normal. The line between hungry and starving, healthy and sick, fades into a blur. Your world shrinks to the size of the cell. Your ambitions reduced to the hope of a crust of bread or a night without shivers. You don't remember what fresh air smells like, or what it feels like to eat until you're full. Meanwhile, outside the jail, life goes on. The trials continue, and so does the town's appetite for fresh scandal. You're out of sight, but not out of mind, especially for anyone who's looking to pin the next disaster on someone else. News of who's fallen ill, who's wasted away, and who's confessed to imaginary crimes travels quickly. Sometimes people confess just for the slim chance of getting better treatment. Anything to escape the slow torture of starvation and sickness. So next time you skip lunch or feel a sniffle coming on, remember, it could always be worse. You could be stuck in a Salem jail, trading stories with dysentery and dining on disappointment. In 1692, staying alive was as much a matter of luck as it was of innocence. If you break, you're paraded out to confess your evil deeds. The crowd loves a spectacle, and the town gossip mill gets a fresh load of scandal to grind. It's like reality TV, but everyone's in bonnets. Imagine being led out of your cell, dazed from sleepless nights and hunger, blinking into the harsh daylight. The whole town gathers, eyes fixed on you, their faces a mix of righteous anticipation and the hope for some midweek entertainment. This isn't just any church service or town meeting. This is Salem's answer to a blockbuster event, starring you and your freshly ruined reputation. Your march to the meeting house. Or, if it's a really big day, the open green. The magistrate clears his throat, ready to preside over the latest public lesson. You shuffle forward, shackles clanking, hands trembling. Someone starts whispering your name, and within seconds it ripples through the crowd. The local children, bored of chasing chickens, line up for a front row seat. Old Mrs. Perkins elbows her way to the front. She hasn't missed a confession since the last eclipse. Now, all eyes are on you as you're prompted. Sometimes gently, more often with thinly veiled threats, to confess your sins before God and everybody. The script is clear. Admit to being in league with the devil. List your co-conspirators, bonus points if you name a rival, and describe in detail your supernatural mischief. I bewitched Goody Baker's cow. I danced with the devil by the moonlight. The more dramatic, the better. If you get creative, you might even win a gasp from the audience. The confession isn't just for show. It's legal fuel for the next round of accusations and trials. The officials nod gravely, taking notes as if each line of your testimony is a revelation and not, say, a desperate attempt to stop the endless torment. Meanwhile, your former friends are already wondering if they should start rehearsing their own apologies, just in case. And then comes the apology portion, the "I'm sorry, I did the devil's bidding. I promise never to do it again. Please let me go back to starving in jail." Some folks break down in tears. Others keep it dry, hoping to maintain a shred of dignity. Either way, the crowd loves it. There's a peculiar satisfaction in watching someone else grovel, especially when it means you're not the one in the spotlight, at least for today. After you've confessed and apologized, the ministers and judges deliver a sermon on the dangers of evil and the importance of community vigilance. This is less about forgiveness and more about reinforcing everyone's fear. You're paraded through town, sometimes with a sign declaring your crimes, like a sandwich board for shame. If you're lucky, they let you return to jail. If you're very unlucky, your confession is deemed insufficiently sincere, and you get another turn in the stocks. Or worse, when you finally return to your cell, the humiliation lingers. The neighbors who once borrowed your butter won't make eye contact, and the children chant your name in rhymes. Every word you spoke is repeated, exaggerated, and twisted by the time it reaches the next village. The officials claim this is penance, but mostly it's punishment and public theater. For the rest of your life, however long that may be, you're branded, not literally, but close. Confessing doesn't bring mercy. It just means your suffering is now officially on the record, preserved for future generations of Salem gossips to dissect over cold porridge. Sometimes you get to walk through town wearing a sign detailing your crimes. There's no music, but plenty of rotten fruit. Think of it as the first walk of shame, but with more potatoes thrown at your face. Imagine it. You're yanked out of your chilly jail cell at dawn and handed a wooden board scrawled with your offenses in giant, humiliating letters, something like witch, liar, or gossip. It's not exactly a fashion statement, but it is the 1692 equivalent of going viral for all the wrong reasons. The local constable gives you a nudge, and suddenly you're out on Main Street, center stage in Salem's least glamorous parade. There's no brass band, but there is a crowd. Everyone from the baker's apprentice to the town's oldest, nosiest busybody. People abandon their chores to watch the show. Even the goats seem to wander over for a look. The elders insist this parade is for your spiritual correction, but to everyone else, it's pure entertainment. Townsfolk bring their best insults, and anything remotely throwable. A stale loaf, a cabbage, or yesterday's turnip stew that didn't turn out right. You shuffle along, the sign bumping your knees, cheeks burning hotter with every step. There's no route that avoids the worst hecklers. Everyone wants a piece of the action. Some kids trail behind you, chanting rhymes or mimicking your gait. The blacksmith's wife throws a wilted onion and somehow manages to hit you squarely in the back. Even your old friend Goody Ellis won't meet your gaze. She's too busy arguing with someone over whether your left ear always looked that pointy. Every so often, you pass the spot where your life went off the rails. There's the bakery, where someone accused you of cursing their bread. There's the well where you looked suspicious that one evening. Now every eye in town sees you through a new, less charitable lens. For years, people will remember you not for your kindness or skill with a spinning wheel, but for the time you wore your shame through the mud. The walk isn't short either. You wind through the busiest parts of town, by design, of course. The whole idea is to make sure as many people as possible get a good look at the day's villain. The constable walks just far enough behind to make sure you don't run, but close enough to remind you there's no escape. If you trip, someone will laugh, and someone else will claim you tripped on your own evil. There's no sympathy, just a festival of judgment. Sometimes, if the mood is right or wrong, you'll stop in the square for a sermon. A minister recites your misdeeds to the crowd and urges everyone to learn from your mistakes. You stand there, rotten fruit trickling down your dress, pretending not to notice the dog sniffing at your ankles. All the while, the crowd is learning exactly what happens when you step out of line or just annoy the wrong neighbor. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, you're herded back to your cell. Sign removed, but humiliation still hanging heavy. The stains on your clothes are a badge of survival, but the stains on your reputation are permanent. For weeks, people whisper as you pass, and any future crime, real or imagined, will be linked to your infamous parade. So next time you dread walking into a meeting after a big mistake, remember, at least no one is pelting you with potatoes and chanting your name. In Salem, a walk of shame was a literal, bruising journey, with every step a reminder that public humiliation is older and smellier than you ever imagined. If you're convicted, it's off to the gallows. No last meal, no appeals, just a short drop and a sudden stop, and a crowd hoping you don't hex them on the way out. The final act of Salem's witch trials isn't subtle or dignified. The whole process is meant to be as public and intimidating as possible, right from the moment the sentence is passed. You're marched through the streets, hands bound, with the same crowd that pelted you with rotten vegetables now watching to see if you'll trip on your way to the scaffold. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, equal parts fear, guilt, and morbid curiosity. People bring their children, not because it's appropriate, but because it's the only entertainment in town that doesn't involve turnips or awkward silences. The gallows are simple: a wooden frame, a rope, and a drop that promises a quick, if not merciful, end. There's no priest to offer comfort unless you count the minister reading out your crimes with the practiced tone of someone who's done this way too many times. There's no moment for last words unless you manage to shout them over the noise of the crowd. Or, if you're feeling especially theatrical, curse the lot of them just for fun. Most people just hope their knees hold out for those last wobbly steps up the platform. For the authorities, execution is less about justice and more about making a statement. They want to show that order is being restored, that fear will keep people in line, and that the town is being purified of whatever evil supposedly lurked in your kitchen pantry. The magistrates stand by, stone-faced, as the hangman gets everything ready. He's the only one who looks like he's not enjoying himself, probably because he's been tasked with tying knots all morning and would rather be anywhere else. And then there's the crowd. Always a crowd. The same folks who gossiped about your witch's mark now wait for the final proof that justice has been served. Some claim to see your ghost hovering nearby. Others just hope you don't take too long. Children whisper rumors about what happens if you glare at someone in the audience at the last moment. She'll haunt you forever. And adults, as superstitious as ever, make sure to avert their eyes, just in case. You stand on the platform, the rope itching against your neck, the executioner mumbling instructions you barely hear. There's no dramatic music, no slow fade-out, just the creak of wood, the muffled coughs of the onlookers, and your own racing heartbeat. If you're lucky, the end comes swiftly. If not, it's a drawn-out affair, with the crowd growing restless and the officials worrying about appearances. In the aftermath, your body is taken down and buried somewhere unceremoniously. No gravestone, no flowers, just a hurried attempt to return to normal life. Some in the crowd hurry home, suddenly worried about what they've witnessed. Others linger, gossiping about how pale you looked, or how the wind picked up at just the right moment, or how they always suspected you were up to something. For your family, there's little comfort. They're left with the shame and suspicion, knowing they're now the relatives of a witch. Your possessions have been seized, your name forever linked to infamy, and your children will be whispered about for years to come. In Salem, the sentence doesn't end at the gallows, it echoes through every hearth and home. So next time you're caught in a social media storm, remember, things could be worse. At least you're not facing a real-life block party at the gallows, with all your neighbors hoping for a quick drop and praying they're not next in line. In 1692, the price of standing out was more than just a bruised reputation. It could be the last act you ever performed. Even in jail, nothing's free. You're billed for your chains, your food, if any, and even your straw bedding. Basically, Salem invented microtransactions before video games did. Welcome to the colonial penal system, where your suffering comes with an itemized bill. Step inside your cell and the first thing you'll notice, other than the overpowering scent of wet hay and mild despair, is that every comfort is a premium upgrade. Want some straw to cushion your shackled body? That'll be a few coins, payable to the jailer who's already eyeing your shoes as possible collateral. If you're broke, you'll quickly discover that even misery has tears, and you're stuck at the bare rocks and cold feet level. The fee structure is impressively creative. There's a charge for the shackles around your wrists, a charge for each meal, even if the meal is a chunk of bread with the texture of a roofing tile, and a separate fee for the wooden bowl itself. Need water? Hope you like yours with a garnish of service surcharge. If you want to send a letter to your family begging for help, that costs extra too: parchment, ink, and the jailer's delivery fee, which may or may not involve actually delivering your letter. In Salem, even hope has a price tag. Family and friends are expected to pay these fees on your behalf, which adds a lovely bonus layer of guilt to your incarceration. The jailer's ledger fills up with the debts of prisoners whose relatives scramble to sell goats, bake pies, or pawn whatever they can just to keep you from freezing or starving. If you don't have anyone on the outside, too bad, your debts pile up while your stomach stays empty. Sometimes, people rot away in jail for months not because they're guilty, but because nobody can afford to spring them loose. Jailers, it turns out, aren't just gatekeepers, they're entrepreneurs. They run the cells like a very bleak bed and breakfast. Except, you can't check out until someone else pays the tab. The more you can scrape together, the better your amenities. A little extra coin buys you less moldy straw, a slightly less rotten turnip, or a rare moment when the guards turn a blind eye to your existence. If you ever wondered what capitalism would look like in a world without toothpaste or basic human rights, this is it. The price of justice doesn't stop there. If you're unlucky enough to be convicted and executed, your family might receive a bill for the use of the gallows and the rope. Even after death, Salem wants one last payment from your estate, assuming you had one and the magistrate hasn't already confiscated it for court expenses. It's a system designed to make sure your suffering lingers, financially, long after your physical ordeal ends. It gets worse. The jailhouse economy breeds its own black market. Some prisoners manage to trade stolen scraps, handmade trinkets, or secret information for extra rations, or a less miserable sleeping spot. A little bribery can go a long way. Just don't get caught, or the fines will multiply. Meanwhile, jailers are always open to gifts from family members. Anything to ensure their loved one's straw isn't swapped for a pile of onion skins. So while you languish in your cell, shivering and plotting your escape from debt, you realize there's one crime worse than witchcraft in Salem: being poor. The jailhouse economy is the ultimate punishment, a never-ending cycle of payment for pain. Survival isn't just a matter of luck or innocence. It's a question of how much you, or your family, can afford to lose. So, the next time you grumble about surprise fees on your streaming bill, remember, Salem's prisoners paid for the privilege of being miserable, one microtransaction at a time. In 1692, jail wasn't just a test of endurance. It was a test of your family's wallet. If you're accused, chances are your friends and family are next. The suspicion spreads faster than cold sores at a kissing booth. Being popular is a dangerous hobby. In Salem, your social network isn't just for sharing recipes and the latest gossip about Goody Miller's suspiciously healthy tomatoes. It's a potential liability. The second you're accused, anyone who's ever borrowed sugar, shared a bench at church, or even waved a little too enthusiastically in your direction is suddenly on the town's mental watch list. Your best friend? Suspect. Your spouse? Extra suspect. Even your favorite cousin who lives 2 villages over is side-eyeing the mailman just in case. The logic here is perfectly irrational. If the devil can corrupt one's soul, why not take down a few more while he's at it? In the eyes of the town, guilt isn't just personal, it's contagious. If you get named, expect your household to be ransacked for evidence, your children questioned for odd behavior, and your spouse grilled about your bedtime habits, and not in the fun, modern way. Kids might be bullied at school, parents interrogated at church, and siblings shunned at the market. Suddenly, your entire bloodline is radioactive. It doesn't help that confessions under duress are the norm. After enough sleepless nights and intimidating questions, most accused break down and name names, often starting with whoever's closest. It's not that they want to, but the promise of lighter punishment, or even just a bowl of soup, is pretty persuasive when your other options involve the stocks, the pillory, or a quick trip to the duck pond. So even if your friend is innocent, your own desperate confession might pull them into the swamp with you. Then there's the chain reaction. Maybe you lent your neighbor a cup of flour, or your brother's wife once complimented your herb garden. Suddenly, both are under suspicion. The magistrates love a good conspiracy, and every connection becomes a possible coven. The web of accusations grows, fueled by fear, old grudges, and a town-wide determination not to be the next name on the list. People scramble to disavow any connection to the accused, and I hardly know them, becomes Salem's most popular catchphrase. Friendships don't stand a chance. If you visit someone in jail, the guards keep notes. If you cry too hard at their trial, you're probably bewitched too. If you seem too unconcerned, that's just as suspicious. Maybe you're hiding something. People begin to avoid each other in the streets. Eyes cast down. Conversations clipped to the bare minimum. The local coffee shop, if there were one, isn't the bustling hub of camaraderie. It's a tense, silent minefield. Families have it even worse. If one member is arrested, the rest are put under the microscope. Mothers are pressured to denounce daughters, husbands forced to testify against wives. If you stand by your loved one, you're suspected of complicity. If you abandon them, you might just save your own skin, but at the cost of your conscience and possibly your soul, at least according to every Puritan within earshot. It doesn't stop with blood ties either. Even business associates, fellow parishioners, and childhood friends can get swept up in the storm. The idea of guilt by association becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a grim group project with no safe way out. The only thing more dangerous than being accused is being on speaking terms with someone who has. So next time you feel awkward about your Facebook friends list or regret giving your neighbor your real phone number, take comfort in knowing you're not living in Salem 1692. Back then, social circles weren't just a source of joy or stress, they were a potential death sentence. In a town where suspicion was the real plague, the best survival strategy was total isolation. Unfortunately, that only made you more suspicious. Catch 22. Colonial style. Meet the experts with their pointy sticks and mysterious books. Whether it's a mole, a birthmark, or a mosquito bite, if it looks weird, it's evidence. Your only hope is perfect skin and zero allergies. In Salem, the arrival of a witch finder is like a visit from the world's least fun dermatologist. The experts, self-proclaimed professionals in the supernatural, stride into town armed with gadgets that look like they were invented during a fever dream. They've got needles, witch-pricking pins, compasses that never point north, and volumes of dubious science. Their most valuable tool? Imagination. The process starts with the dreaded full-body inspection. If you're accused, Prepare for the most awkward strip search of your life. You stand, shivering in the town meeting house while a crowd of elders, neighbors, and enthusiastic onlookers examine every inch of your skin. Anything that doesn't resemble a 17th century beauty standard becomes a potential devil's mark. Moles, freckles, warts, old scars, or even that mosquito bite you scratched last night, suddenly they're all evidence that you've been personally branded by Satan. The witchfinder brings out a long, shiny pin, sometimes called a witch pricker, designed to poke at any mark and see if you flinch. If you don't react, it's suspicious. Maybe the devil is protecting you. If you do react, well, that's also suspicious. No-win scenario. Some witchfinders even carried hollow needles to fake the results, ensuring a good show for the crowd. It's less science, more stage magic with extra humiliation. And then there are the witches' teats, a favorite subject of the era's suspicious minds. If the examiner finds anything resembling a third nipple, a weird birthmark, or even an oddly shaped mole, you're in trouble. The theory is that witches use these secret bodily features to feed their familiars, demonic pets who sneak into your house at night for a little supernatural snack. Congratulations, your eczema patch is now a star witness for the prosecution. The Witchfinder's Book, often a battered collection of European folklore and half-remembered medical notes, is consulted for guidance. This book is filled with grim illustrations of what witch marks are supposed to look like, most of which resemble normal skin conditions, but with scarier captions. The experts flip through pages, nodding sagely, while you try not to pass out from embarrassment or rage. The examination can last for hours. People debate the meaning of every spot and bump, the crowd whispering theories about that freckle you've had since childhood. If you try to protest, they just add arguing to your list of suspicious behaviors. If you stay quiet, that's further proof you're hiding something. The worst part? The examiners are often the same neighbors who used to ask for your bread recipe, now gleefully wielding pins in the name of justice. Of course, there are more tools. Mysterious powders sprinkled on the floor to detect footprints of invisible imps. Astrological charts pulled out to see if you were born under a dangerous star sign, and a handful of Latin phrases for dramatic effect. None of it makes any sense, but the sheer spectacle is enough to keep the crowd entertained and the accused terrified. By the time the inspection is done, you're left with sore skin, shattered dignity, and a new reputation as someone with questionable marks. Even if they find nothing, people will remember that you were examined. And in Salem, suspicion is harder to shake than a bad rash. So next time you worry about a pimple before a big presentation, be grateful you're not in a town where bad skin is an actual felony. In 1692, the Witchfinder's toolkit was less about finding evil and more about proving anyone could be guilty. With the right combination of pointy sticks and medieval imagination, the court will strip and inspect you for anything that might look like a witch's teat. Spoiler: it's never flattering, and the privacy policy is non-existent. Imagine being marched into a dimly lit room, surrounded by the most judgmental faces in town, and told to disrobe so everyone can inspect your body for suspicious marks. The town elders, the experts, and sometimes even your nosy neighbors, all with front row seats to your most humiliating moment. The privacy policy? There isn't one. Your dignity is tossed out the window, and any sense of personal space evaporates faster than your reputation. The hunt for the devil's mark is one of Salem's most creative leaps of legal reasoning. The logic goes like this. The devil, being the world's worst tattoo artist, supposedly marks his followers with a special spot. Could be a mole, a birthmark, a scar, or even a weird skin tag. The mark itself is supposed to be insensitive to pain, which means you're subjected to the delightful process of having it poked and prodded with pins, needles, or whatever sharp object is handy. React to the poke? Suspicious. Don't react? Witch. It's less of a medical exam and more of a group effort in gaslighting. If you have a birthmark in an odd place, well, congratulations. That's now evidence that you spent too much time with the wrong crowd in the afterlife. Stretch marks? Witch. Freckle that's always been there? Witch. Old burn scar from that time you got too close to the hearth as a child? The devil must have done it. Salem's court system is an equal opportunity humiliator. No blemish goes unaccused. The process is invasive, embarrassing, and completely one-sided. You can't object, and if you do, that's taken as more proof you're hiding something. People whisper and stare as the examination continues, every spot becoming a possible witch's teat, a supposed secret nipple for feeding your demonic animal companions, because apparently 1692 was a golden age for both paranoia and imagination. After the inspection, the court gathers to discuss their findings, flipping through their worn-out manuals of witch identification, which mostly look like a poorly illustrated dermatology pamphlet. Some towns have actual searchers, self-appointed experts in mark hunting, whose main qualifications are nosiness and a willingness to poke strangers for a living. Their expert testimony is given the same weight as medical advice from a fortune cookie. For the accused, there's no way to win. No matter how normal your skin is, someone will find something. A mosquito bite, a mole, a rash from bad jail food. Each becomes a footnote in the town's collective imagination. You're left shivering in the cold, exposed not only to Salem's frigid air but to the frosty judgment of everyone you've ever met. And the humiliation doesn't end with the examination. News travels fast in a small town. By supper, everyone's talking about that odd mark the magistrates found. And your reputation is forever changed. Children will whisper about it at the well, adults will exchange glances, and your name will be added to the ever-growing list of those people. There's no such thing as innocent until proven guilty, only unmarked until inspected. So next time you fret about an awkward mole or a stretch mark, remember, in Salem, a skin blemish could be a death sentence. The devil's mark wasn't just proof of guilt. It was a blank check for suspicion, paranoia, and public embarrassment. In a world with no privacy and even less mercy, your best hope was flawless skin and a lot of luck, which, in 1692, was just another word for not yet accused. Many accusations come straight from children. Their testimony is as reliable as a 5-year-old's weather report, but somehow even more dangerous. In the world of the Salem Witch Trials, childhood innocence is weaponized. Imagine a courtroom where the star witnesses are the very same kids who spent last week sticking frogs in your mailbox and tattling about who stole the last apple. Now, these children are paraded before the magistrates and the whole town, ready to share stories with the drama and confidence only a bored, slightly mischievous preteen can muster. It starts with a fit, sudden shrieks, dramatic writhing, maybe even some creative babbling about seeing a ghostly cat or a woman in black standing at the foot of the bed. All it takes is one child pointing a shaky finger and shouting, "She did it!" and the grown-ups are off to the races. Adults who should know better suddenly accept every word as gospel. Forget fact-checking, this is Salem. And the scarier the story, the more likely it is to be believed. The children's testimonies are equal parts improv show and fever dream. With every gasp, every phantom scratch, the accusations snowball. One girl's nightmare becomes another girl's vision. Soon, the afflicted are putting on a show worthy of Broadway, complete with convulsions, sudden blindness, and mysterious bites that always heal by morning. Judges, ministers, and neighbors all lean in, enthralled by the spectacle and convinced that only pure evil could be behind such convincing performances. Of course, the grown-ups aren't blameless. They encourage the theatrics. rewarding the most dramatic claims with praise, sympathy, and sometimes even a day off from chores. Why help with laundry when you can help convict a witch? For a group of kids living in a town with zero entertainment options, the attention is intoxicating. Suddenly, the least popular child becomes a local celebrity, her every scream treated like urgent news. The dangers of this system are obvious to anyone who's ever played telephone or listened to a group of children explain how the vase broke. Small lies become big ones. Old grudges resurface. Didn't get an invitation to a birthday party? Accuse the host of bewitching your dog. Lost a game of marbles? Maybe your opponent is consorting with the devil. Even the most innocent events, a neighbor's stern look or a scolding for skipping church, can be recycled into evidence by a creative child with a score to settle. The adults double down. They ask leading questions, suggest names, and push for more detail. Did you see Goody Parker flying through the window? Was there a black dog with her? Before you know it, the story has grown legs and a tail. Under pressure, some kids confess to making things up, but by then, it's too late. The damage is done. In a court where a child's fever dream is worth more than an adult's reputation, innocence doesn't stand a chance. Worse, the accused are put in an impossible position. Try to defend yourself, and you're bullying a child. Stay silent, and your silence is proof of guilt. If you react too strongly, the court claims you're using witchcraft to torment the poor children further. It's a legal no-win scenario straight out of a nightmare. As the hysteria grows, so does the body count. Testimony that started as childish fantasy turns deadly serious. Neighbors turn on neighbors. Families are torn apart. And all because a handful of bored kids were handed the spotlight and encouraged to run wild. So next time you hear a wild rumor started by a kid, take a deep breath and remember Salem. In 1692, the children weren't just the future, they were judge, jury, and the most dangerous storytellers in town. Salem proves that nothing spreads faster than a rumor, except maybe lice. Fear and gossip combine into the 17th century version of a viral tweet storm. But with higher stakes than being cancelled, it starts quietly. A whispered accusation in the churchyard, a suspicious glance across the market, someone's baby crying at the wrong moment. But in Salem, it doesn't take much for tension to go full-on exponential. Before long, the entire town is tangled up in a feverish group project where the only goal is to out-paranoid your neighbors. The result? A hysteria so contagious, it makes the common cold look shy. The seeds of panic are planted in fertile ground. The Puritans live in constant anxiety about failing crops, harsh winters, raids, and whether the neighbor's new soup recipe is a gateway to eternal damnation. Add in a dash of religious fervor, a pinch of old grudges, and a population that considers fun a suspicious activity, and you have the perfect recipe for disaster. Everyone's on edge, and all it takes is one dramatic accusation to send the town into overdrive. The speed at which panic spreads would make social media algorithms jealous. 1 minute, you're discussing whether the bread is too chewy, and the next, you're debating if your neighbor's new mole is a sign of diabolical activity. Suspicions bounce from house to house with the energy of a loose chicken. Facts are optional. What matters is how scary the story sounds and who's telling it. Everyone gets involved. The ministers deliver fire and brimstone sermons about invisible evil lurking behind every bush. Town meetings devolve into anxious recitations of who's acting odd and why. Local experts are brought in to poke, prod, and pronounce judgment on everything from freckles to frowns. The more elaborate the accusation, the more eager the audience becomes. The dynamic is relentless, a true group project from hell. No one wants to be left out of the action, whether as an accuser or a judge. Neighbors compete for moral superiority. Who can be more suspicious? Who can spot the next witch first? It's a contest with no winners and an ever-growing pile of losers. Once the hysteria catches fire, the logic of the community goes straight out the window. If someone confesses to flying through the air on a broomstick, the crowd nods thoughtfully. If an accused person denies everything, well, that's exactly what a clever witch would do. In Salem, there's no such thing as too wild an accusation. If it's dramatic, it's probably true. The panic is self-perpetuating. The more people are accused, the more everyone else panics about being next. Silence becomes suspicious. Kindness is reinterpreted as a cover for evil. People stop helping each other, keep their curtains drawn, and answer the door only after reciting a few emergency prayers. Hysteria also provides the perfect cover for old grievances. Have a feud with your neighbor? This is your chance to settle the score. Just a whispered accusation, and your least favorite local becomes public enemy number one. In the rush to protect themselves, people turn on each other. Friendships are torched, and families divided, all in the name of safety. By the time the dust settles and the town finally wakes up from its collective nightmare, lives have been ruined, the community is scarred, and everyone's left wondering how things got so out of hand. The lesson, of course, comes too late. Moral panics feed on fear, and mass hysteria is the original crowdsourced disaster. So the next time you see a trending hashtag and feel your blood pressure spike, remember, Salem did it first, and with much, much worse prizes for the losers. In 1692, panic wasn't just viral, it was deadly. Foreign accent? You're a witch. Bad at making friends? You're a witch. Arrived in town after 1700? Probably a time-traveling witch. If you don't fit in, you're out. Way, way out. In Salem, being an outsider is basically a one-way ticket to suspicion. Imagine showing up in a small town where everyone else has known each other since birth, shares the same 3 last names, and considers change a form of heresy. You walk into the tavern, say hello with the wrong lilt, and every head swivels in unison. Suddenly, you're the main character in a very tense play, and your biggest crime is not blending into the scenery. The list of what makes you different is both endless and absurd. Maybe you're from a few villages over, or you grew up in a household that pronounces porridge with an extra syllable. Perhaps your clothes are cut just a bit differently, or your hair refuses to cooperate with the town standard of severe, no-nonsense braids. Maybe you don't like turnips, suspicious. Don't attend every church service, highly suspicious. Or, worst of all, read books that aren't the Bible. That's basically a written confession. The Puritan community thrives on sameness. Outsiders disrupt the balance, bring in new ideas, and, heaven forbid, different ways of baking bread. If you're friendly and try too hard, you're hiding something. If you're shy and keep to yourself, you're secretive and plotting. Basically, there's no right way to be an outsider in Salem. There's just a long list of wrong ones. If you arrived recently, everyone wonders what you're running from. Are you escaping scandal? Or worse, bringing some mysterious curse with you? If you've got skills the town doesn't understand, a knack for herbal remedies, say, or the ability to write legibly, you're practically advertising your connection to the dark arts. In a community terrified of the unknown, every difference becomes dangerous. Children, of course, are expert spotters of anyone who doesn't fit in. They whisper about your strange ways and dare each other to walk past your house after sunset. If one of them wakes up with a stomachache, you're suddenly the talk of the playground, and not in a good way. Parents, eager to protect their families, keep their kids away, and before you know it, you're living in a bubble of suspicion, alone in a crowd. The town's leaders don't help. They see outsiders as both a threat and a handy scapegoat. Got a run of bad weather? Blame the new guy. Harvest comes up short? Must be the fault of that woman with the odd accent. Someone's sheep goes missing? Obviously witchcraft. Imported straight from out of town. You get pulled into meetings, grilled about your past, and reminded over and over that trust here is earned very, very slowly and lost instantly. Things get especially dicey if you try to defend yourself. Arguing your innocence or explaining your background just makes you look more suspicious. Remaining silent? That's classic witch behavior. The more you try to fit in, the more obvious it becomes that you don't. At some point, you realize the only way to avoid suspicion is to stop existing, which unfortunately is usually reserved for after the witch trial. So next time you feel awkward at a new job or like you stand out at a family reunion, take comfort in knowing at least nobody's accusing you of sorcery because you mispronounced oregano. In Salem, different wasn't just dangerous, it was a direct invitation to a world of trouble. And if you're unlucky, you'll go down in local history as the outsider who never quite learned how to say porridge the right way. Eventually, the hysteria dies down, and everyone realizes maybe torturing half the town wasn't their best look. Cue public remorse, awkward apologies, and the slow, creaky return to normal life. But the scars and the stories last much longer. It happens slowly at first. One day, people stop whispering quite so loudly in the market. The church sermons get a little less fiery. Someone cracks a cautious joke about how Goody Wilson's bewitched cat turned out to be just pregnant again. There's a collective exhale as neighbors look around and realize the witches are gone, because, shockingly, there probably weren't any to begin with. The authorities, for their part, try to distance themselves from the mess. The judges quietly retire or move to another village where witchcraft means nothing more than a bad pie recipe. Some ministers offer sermons about forgiveness and community healing, but no one misses the way they skip over the part where they fueled the panic in the first place. The new town leadership would really like to talk about anything else, like how the crops are doing or whether the well needs fixing. Witch trials? Let's pretend those were just a phase, but life in Salem doesn't just snap back to normal. The families of the accused struggle with grief and shame. Children who testified now live with a heavy silence, their parents quietly urging them never to talk about those days again. The names of the dead are spoken in hushed tones, and any conversation about justice is met with shifty eyes and a quick change of subject. People move away, hoping for a fresh start, or stay put and hope that time erases memories. Then come the apologies. Some are public, petitions signed by townsfolk, confessions from jurors, or rare statements of regret from the very ministers who once led the charge. Others are more private. A loaf of bread left on a doorstep, a mumbled "I'm sorry" at the market, an awkward hug at the well. There's no grand gesture that can fix what's been done, but there are small tentative efforts to stitch the community back together. But the wounds run deep. Land and property lost to fines or confiscation are rarely returned. Children orphaned by the hangings carry their own ghosts, and friends wonder if they'll ever really trust each other again. A joke about witchcraft at a harvest festival gets no laughs, just uneasy glances and tightened lips. Outside Salem, the rest of New England takes note. Pamphlets and sermons circulate about the dangers of overzealous justice. Other towns look at Salem and vow never to let it happen there, at least not in exactly the same way. The legacy of the trials becomes a cautionary tale, told in schools and whispered in kitchens. Don't let fear make you foolish. Don't believe everything you hear. And if someone tries to bake a urine cake, maybe just have oatmeal instead. For years to come, the memory lingers. The fields and roads are the same, but the people walk a little more carefully, laugh a little less loudly, and wonder how quickly normal life can fall apart when fear takes over. In the quiet moments, just before sleep, or during a slow day at the mill, someone will remember the faces of those lost, the wild accusations, and the way ordinary life turned into a nightmare. So next time you hear about a panic sweeping through a community, remember Salem, a town that learned, all too late, that hysteria burns hotter and longer than any witch's fire. The apologies may come, but the scars? Those are forever. If you think office politics are bad, try colonial Salem, where your neighbor's grudge over a borrowed saucepan could turn into an accusation of shape-shifting into a demonic rabbit. Old beefs, jealousy, and personal vendettas weren't just water-cooler gossip. They were the rocket fuel for witchcraft accusations. Suddenly, that time you forgot to return a pie plate, evidence of a pact with Satan. In a world where everyone's business is everyone else's business, and privacy is just a rumor, colonial Salem runs on petty drama. Every small slight is carefully catalogued and filed away for a rainy day. Or, more likely, for the day someone needs a scapegoat. The town may be tiny, but its memory is long, and its capacity for holding grudges is truly Olympic. The seeds of resentment are sown in the pettiest soil. Did Goody Proctor's cow stray into your garden and nibble on your beans? Maybe you swapped icy words about fence repairs? Or you both reached for the last good pumpkin at the harvest market? These aren't just minor squabbles, they're kindling for full-blown witchcraft hysteria. When tempers simmer for months or years, and nobody ever quite lets go of old slights, it doesn't take much for suspicion to blossom into accusation. And let's not forget the power of envy. Someone's corn crop came up better than yours. Their child survived a fever while yours didn't. In a town with so much hardship and so little joy, any success can look suspicious. Any misfortune, yours or theirs, can start to feel personal. Salem is a pressure cooker of jealousy, fueled by the impossible task of keeping up with the Joneses when the Joneses think you're making deals with the devil. It isn't just neighbors either. Family drama goes public at the drop of a bonnet. Sibling rivalries, inheritance disputes. The ever-popular, "she looked at me funny" argument. All of it is ripe for escalation. In a place where the community is small, the pool of potential enemies is unfortunately familiar. It's a little like being trapped in a never-ending Thanksgiving dinner, except everyone's armed with puritanical suspicion and a working knowledge of folk curses. The truly diabolical twist comes when the legal system rewards these vendettas. Accuse your rival, and you might gain their property, eliminate the competition, or at least get some sweet, sweet revenge. The courts don't demand much in the way of evidence, just a loud voice, a good story, and a few nervous townsfolk willing to nod along. Old rumors and half-remembered insults get woven into testimonies, transforming yesterday's passive-aggressive glare into today's damning evidence. There's also safety in numbers. If someone you dislike is accused, it's a great opportunity to jump on the bandwagon and pile on with your own grievances. The more people speak up, the more true the story becomes. Salem's groupthink is so strong that a petty disagreement over a chicken coop can spiral into supernatural allegations and, sometimes, a full-blown witch hunt. And so, what started as a kitchen squabble or a bad trade at the market can end at the gallows. Lives are destroyed over garden fences, burned bread, or who borrowed whose bonnet without asking. The cycle feeds itself. Today's accuser might be tomorrow's accused, and nobody ever feels truly safe. Salem's web of grudges gets tighter, stickier, and deadlier, trapping everyone in its path. So next time you catch yourself stewing over a minor slight or rolling your eyes at a neighbor's loud lawnmower, remember Salem. In 1692, letting go of old drama wasn't just good advice, it was a survival strategy. Because in a world where every spat can turn into a scandal, forgiveness is the rarest and safest magic of all. Life in 1692 is short on amusements, so what's left when church is over? Witch hunts. Trials become the ultimate spectator sport. Forget football. This is the event everyone in town attends. Vendors sell treats. Parents lift their kids onto their shoulders. And someone's always loudly betting on who's next. It's The Bachelor, but the rose ceremony involves shackles. In a place where your big weekend plan might be scrape mud off the roof, public witch trials are the social event of the season. The town green transforms from grazing pasture to packed arena. Neighbors jostle for a good spot, clutching apples, roasted nuts, or whatever counts as a treat when sugar is more valuable than gold. The market stalls might be closed, but there's always someone with a basket of day-old bread ready to cash in on the drama. Kids, of course, are loving every minute. For them, this is part carnival, part morbid curiosity lesson. Parents hoist their little ones high for a better view, passing on both a lifelong fear of different and the family recipe for side-eye. Children race around, reenacting last week's trial, making up chants, and trading stories about who saw what, where, and with how many black cats. In an era without cartoons or playgrounds, Witch Hunt is the top-rated show in town. The adults aren't much better. The gossip is thick, the side bets flow, and everyone claims to know who's next on the accused list. There's always someone making loud predictions. My money's on Goody Baxter. She's had that weird cough for weeks. The trials are the one time you'll see the whole town together and, in their own way, united. Sure, it's unity built on terror and suspicion, but unity nonetheless. As for the accused, the spectacle is horrifying. You're led through the crowd, faces peering and whispering, people elbowing their way forward just to catch a glimpse of the witch. There's no dignity, just a gauntlet of hungry eyes. Some in the crowd watch with genuine fear, others with the eagerness of fans at a concert. The luckier accused get sympathy murmurs, but most are met with hisses and the occasional flying vegetable. Every cough, trip, or tear is analyzed and discussed for days. The town elders and magistrates don't mind the attention either. For once, people are listening to every word. The more dramatic the accusation, the bigger the audience. The ministers thunder from their pulpits about sin and salvation. Local experts offer their opinions on devil's marks and spectral evidence, and the whole ordeal starts to feel like an impromptu stage play, everyone hoping not to be cast in the next starring role. The entertainment value seeps into the legal proceedings themselves. Examinations are conducted in full view, with extra theatrics for the crowd. Hysteria spreads like wildfire as children throw fits, afflicted townsfolk swoon, and witnesses gasp at the right moments. If someone faints, it's not just a medical emergency, it's a highlight. The more dramatic the scene, the better. Of course, when the spectacle ends, everyone files home, chattering about what they've seen, spinning new rumors, and marking their calendars for the next trial. The kids mimic the events with mock trials and accusations, play that's disturbingly close to reality. The cycle continues, as each public panic feeds the next. So next time you grumble about boring town meetings or awkward community barbecues, remember Salem. In 1692, getting together meant a front row seat to fear and frenzy. For all the horror and heartbreak, the witch hunts were also the era's twisted form of entertainment, a show you couldn't afford to miss, but absolutely didn't want to star in. Salem's Puritans find a rag doll, a poppet, in your home. Congratulations, You now own witchcraft's hottest new gadget. Any random doll stuffed with pins is proof you're cursing the neighbors. Suddenly, your kids' toys are a threat to community safety, and everyone's pretending they never owned a stuffed animal in their life. In a town obsessed with finding evil in every nook and cranny, the humble poppet goes from innocent toy to public enemy number one overnight. Your child's comfort object or even a lovingly sewn good luck charm becomes Exhibit A in the never-ending trial of who is trying to hex my cows this week. The search for evidence during a witch investigation is thorough, and if a rag doll turns up in your pantry, you're in for a long day. Let's break down the logic. Poppets look a bit like people, so obviously, the only thing anyone would do with one is practice malicious voodoo. If your neighbor's cow suddenly walks in circles, it must be because your daughter's poppet is missing a button. Did Goody Hawkins have a headache? Someone poked a needle in the rag doll's head. In Salem, bad luck never comes from bad weather or spoiled grain. It comes from the nearest suspicious plushie. During a raid, the authorities, imagine the world's grumpiest toy inspectors, rifle through your belongings with grim purpose. A poppet with pins is considered direct evidence of dark arts. But even a naked, limbless doll is enough to raise eyebrows. You protest that it's just a toy, or a homemade pincushion, or maybe your only attempt at crafts that wasn't completely embarrassing. Doesn't matter. The story writes itself. Witch curses town with rag doll, film at 11. If you're unlucky, the poppet in question will bear a passing resemblance to one of your accusers. Maybe it has black yarn hair, or a dress that looks like Goody Putnam's favorite apron. Suddenly, the fit she had last week makes perfect sense. To everyone but you. You hexed her with your forbidden poppet powers. The magistrates nod sagely, as if this is the most logical conclusion ever drawn. You, meanwhile, try to explain that the only magic you performed was getting your child to nap with a homemade comfort object. It gets better. The townsfolk love a mystery, and the poppet is a ready-made one. Was it found hidden under the bed? More proof you're up to something nefarious. Did the doll have a pin in its side? Someone's sure to claim that coincided with their mysterious backache. The less sense it makes, the more everyone seems to believe it. In a place where logic is already running on fumes, a doll full of stuffing is as damning as a cauldron full of frog legs. Of course, after the search, the rumors explode. Everyone swears they've never seen a poppet in their home, never played with dolls, and certainly never handed one to a child. The more creative townsfolk might even plant a poppet in a rival's house just to spice things up. By the end of the week, the poppet population is down, but the accusations are up. You can't win. Too many dolls, you're a witch. Not enough, you're hiding something. The poppet panic ripples through the community. Children are scolded for playing with anything softer than a log. Women hide their sewing projects, and the local cats look nervous. Because who knows what the next household object will be accused of? In the collective imagination of Salem, even the most innocent things can become a source of terror and suspicion. So the next time you trip over a stuffed animal or find a Barbie with questionable haircuts, give it a gentle pat and a grateful sigh. In 1692, that plushie wasn't just a toy. It was a one-way ticket to the witness stand. In Salem, imagination could turn comfort into calamity, all thanks to the terrifying magic of the poppet. Pregnancy doesn't save you from suspicion. In fact, it might make things worse. If you miscarry, it's the devil's work. If you give birth to twins, everyone gets extra nervous. Midwives are under scrutiny too, blamed for strange births or bad luck. The result? Prenatal care now includes prayers, panic, and occasionally being accused of midwifery sorcery. In Salem, motherhood isn't just about morning sickness, weird cravings, and swollen ankles. It's a full-on public event, with everyone from the minister to your least favorite neighbor monitoring your every move. In a town obsessed with finding signs, every twitch, sigh, or odd look during pregnancy is potential evidence of otherworldly interference. Got heartburn? That's just the devil stoking the fire. Feeling queasy? Must be the result of a midnight deal with dark forces. Suddenly, glowing with pregnancy is less about health and more about possibly being radioactive. The paranoia doesn't stop with the mothers. Midwives, the original women's health experts, are on the front lines. Their knowledge of herbs, birth positions, and all things women's business is both respected and feared. When a birth goes smoothly, everyone whispers. But when it doesn't, well, someone has to be blamed. And the person catching the baby is the obvious target. A baby born with a birthmark? Witchcraft. A breech delivery? Midwife must have made a pact. Twins? Clearly the devil's 2-for-1 special. If you're unlucky enough to miscarry, grief is no protection. The community starts speculating about curses and unnatural interference. Perhaps you attracted the evil eye by skipping church, or maybe your husband angered the wrong neighbor. The rumor mill turns tragedy into accusation in record time. And before you've even processed your loss, you're defending yourself against supernatural slander. Even a healthy pregnancy can be a problem. If you look too happy, you're hiding something. If you're pale or sickly, you're hiding something else. Too many cravings? Suspicious. Too few? Also suspicious. Someone's always watching, always keeping score, and always ready to update the town's running tally of weird things pregnant women did before being accused. Let's not forget childbirth itself, a terrifying prospect even in the best circumstances. In Salem, it's made worse by the constant fear that something will go wrong and the blame will fall on you or your midwife. If a baby comes too early, too late, too small, or too loud, there's a reason for concern. If a child doesn't thrive, or if the mother falls ill, the explanations lean less on medical logic and more on supernatural drama. Sometimes, even a perfectly normal birth isn't enough to quell suspicions. Someone might recall a dream they had about you turning into a black cat, and suddenly that's relevant testimony. After the birth, the scrutiny continues. Neighbors count your children, examine them for marks, and keep track of whose kids seem particularly energetic, possibly bewitched, or unusually quiet, definitely bewitched. As a new mother, you're expected to return to church looking suitably exhausted and penitent. Smile too much, and you're unnaturally cheerful. Smile too little, and you're cold and unfeeling, maybe even inhuman. Through it all, the community's favorite pastime is worrying aloud about who's next. Is the baker's wife showing? Has the blacksmith's daughter been seen with a mysterious herbal tea? Rumors about secret midwife rituals and suspicious nighttime visitors fill the air. No matter how careful you are, you can't escape the watchful eyes or the eager fingers pointing your way if anything goes even slightly off script. So the next time you hear someone stress about modern pregnancy advice, remember, in 1692, Salem, every stage of pregnancy was a potential witch trial, and if you were both pregnant and a midwife, you'd better keep a low profile, a steady prayer life, and maybe a good alibi for every full moon. In Salem, even bringing new life into the world could land you at the center of the witch hunt. Think the madness stops at the town border? Think again. Once the panic catches fire in Salem, expert witch-finders get invited to nearby villages. Soon, everyone within 10 miles is side-eyeing their grandma, and even your livestock looks nervous. The drama spreads faster than a buy-one, get-one free rumor at the town market. In 1692, Salem's unique blend of paranoia and pageantry proved contagious. Word of the trials, confessions, and thrilling public accusations traveled far and wide, thanks, in no small part, to traveling ministers and witch-finding experts who saw a real business opportunity in the growing hysteria. Forget the traveling salesman hawking pots and pans. The new cottage industry was selling suspicion, and business was booming. These witch-finders became the rock stars of the colonial circuit, invited from town to town to perform their grim, melodramatic rituals. They'd arrive with the tools of the trade, pricking needles, heavy books of evidence, and an impressive vocabulary of supernatural buzzwords. The local leaders would greet them with the reverence usually reserved for visiting royalty or, at the very least, someone with fresh news from Boston. The atmosphere would shift in an instant. A sleepy hamlet became the next episode of Witch Hunt Live. Once in town, the experts wasted no time. They'd interview the afflicted, inspect the suspected, and give lengthy speeches about the wiles of Satan. Sometimes, they even staged dramatic tests or called for all villagers to present themselves for examination. Suddenly, your boring old molehill of a feud with Goody Pratt next door was a mountain of devilish intrigue, and your usual Sunday headache had a sinister explanation. Witchfinder road trips weren't just about justice. They were about performance and profit. Witchfinders often got paid for their trouble, and the more witches they found, the better their reputation and the bigger their fees in the next town. Each visit fueled the rumor mill, stoked old grudges, and left a wake of broken friendships and new suspects. The hysteria was like a bad folk song, catchy, repetitive, and impossible to get out of your head. Of course, these road shows were hard on the accused. Suddenly, people who thought themselves safe from Salem's drama found themselves dragged into the madness. Maybe you'd only heard about the witch trials secondhand, rolled your eyes, and gone back to planting beans. Then the witchfinder's cart rumbled into your square, and suddenly you were wondering if that time you sneezed during church would be enough to get you questioned. Or worse, tested. Livestock didn't fare any better. A chicken lays a funny-looking egg? That's a sign. A cow refuses to give milk? Clearly bewitched. Even the family dog gets dragged in for a sniff test, just in case it's hiding a poppet or two in its fur. And when everyone's on edge, any accident, illness, or strange occurrence is ready-made for an accusation. The drama, of course, always traveled faster than the truth. Once the witchfinder packed up and moved on, towns were left to sort through the chaos. Divided families, devastated reputations, empty jails, and a pile of unpaid witchfinder bills. Local ministers had to smooth things over. Parents reassured children. And, at least for a while, everyone tried to go back to pretending that the only things to fear were wolves and winter storms. But the memory lingered, and the suspicion stuck. Years later, people would still whisper about the time the witchfinder came to town, about who was accused and who barely escaped. If Salem was a wildfire, the witchfinder road trips were sparks carried on the wind, spreading paranoia, drama, and the art of blaming your neighbor for everything that went wrong. So next time someone brings drama to your door, just remember, it could always be worse. In colonial New England, all it took was one traveling expert to make a mess nobody could ever really clean up. In 1692, witchfinder road trips meant no one, and no place, was truly safe from suspicion. And so, as our lantern fades and the gavel falls, let's take a deep, slow breath, preferably not through a linen mask, full of rye flour and accusations, and look back at the Salem Witch Trials from the safe distance of your own cozy bed. Tonight, you've survived the rumors, the public humiliations, the pond dunkings, and the moral panic that somehow made a mole on your ankle into breaking news. You've tiptoed past vengeful neighbors, dodged airborne turnips at the pillory, and endured every flavor of sleep deprivation known to the 17th century mind. You saw how fear can turn the ordinary into the absurd, and how sometimes the most dangerous thing in town isn't a spell or a curse. It's a group of people with too much time and not enough facts. But let's be honest. It's easy to laugh at history's superstitions from a place with central heating, indoor plumbing, and a legal system that, usually, doesn't believe you can curse your boss by sneezing in their general direction. Still, if you listen close, there's something hauntingly familiar about Salem's story. People wanting answers, searching for control, and sometimes getting a little carried away with finger-pointing and evidence that wouldn't hold up in a game of charades, let alone a court of law. The real survivors of Salem weren't the ones with perfect skin or quiet cats. They were the ones who made it through night after night of fear, suspicion, and loss. Their resilience is our inheritance, stitched into the comfort of every soft blanket and every moment of calm we take for granted. So tonight, as you tuck yourself in, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the people who endured real nightmares so we could have boring ones. And maybe, just maybe, be extra kind to your neighbors, no matter how weird their sourdough starter looks. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the world is wild, people are stubborn, and sometimes surviving the day is a kind of magic all its own. Sleep well, and may your dreams be free of angry Puritans and suspiciously heavy stones. Good night.